All right, everyone, thank you for being here. Welcome to Laurel Ridge Community College. I'm Brandy Hawkins-Boyce, Director of Communications and Outreach here. Sorry, I had to take a second. My title just changed a little bit. I was like, what am I? I've worked here for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of different things happen over time, but one of the first things I talked to Betty about when I saw her is when I first started in student activities, the president at the time, Dr. Ski, had us in student activities. We worked with him to start the Walking Kings Talk Award, and I remember the Kilby family being here. We honored your brother. Later, we honored you and many, many others, and so it's our partnerships and our efforts in promoting diversity and community vitality, bringing the community together. We're so proud of that. We're proud of everyone that partnered with this event and sponsored this event. So it's been a pleasure to work with Marquita and many others to make this happen today. So thank you for showing up. Thanks to those online watching. Welcome to Laurel Ridge. I'll say it again. This is our Middletown campus. We have another campus over in Warrenton and a center in Luray. We invite you back anytime. Keep an eye out at laurelridge.edu/community events to keep up with other things that we have going on. Today's presentation is live right now on our YouTube page, but it will be there later if you'd like to go back and watch it or encourage others to watch. And you should be able to find that at laurelridge.edu/Kilby. And now I'd like to introduce our professor, Larry Friedenberg, who helps me get into these opportunities, these awesome programs on our campus. He often hears about them and collaborates and brings those to me, and just enjoy having here on campus for bringing these amazing opportunities to our students and the community. So welcome, Larry Friedenberg.
Wow. Thank you, Brandy. And unlike Brandy, I have to have 5 pages of notes because otherwise I'll talk for 15 minutes to 2 hours. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Larry Friedenberg. I'm Assistant Professor of Sociology and Human Services here at Laurel Ridge. And before I share just a little from an instructional perspective, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of our event. If there are representatives here from the organizations that I'm going to say or speak, please stand if you would, and at the end we'll all thank you with applause. So Laurel Ridge Community College is a sponsor. Shenandoah River District United Women in Faith and specific units include Leesburg United Methodist Church, Brucetown United Methodist Church, and Stevens City United Methodist Church. Belgrove Plantation, Northern Shenandoah Valley coming to the table, Shenandoah River District United Methodist Church. I'm going to go really fast here because there's 19 sponsors. Virginia Annual Conference United Women in Faith, the Strasburg United Methodist Church, Strasburg United Methodist Men, or United Methodist Church Methodist Men, the Virginia Annual Conference United Methodist Church Methodist Men, Virginia Annual Conference United Methodist Church Cross-Racial Cross-Cultural Resource Team, the Warren Page NAACP, the Shenandoah County NAACP, Robin Lytle, anonymous if you dare to stand, Virginia United Methodist Church Director of Belonging and Advocacy, Reverend Lan Davis Wilson, and Strasburg Museum at the Strasburg Visitors Center. Let's just clap, if we would, for everyone here. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay, you may sit. Okay. So when I moved to Shenandoah County more than 30 years ago, I remember being somewhat shocked at all the displays of the Confederacy. And when I asked people about it, they always seemed to say something like, well, the county didn't really enslave people, and that's why there's so little evidence. So, honestly, I have lived my entire life south of the Mason-Dixon line, and so it was something new to see. Over the years, though, I've learned a very different, more complete and inclusive story about our community. Stories of resistance, stories of healing, stories that share all the ways all peoples have contributed to our sense of community. I've learned it takes deliberate effort to learn and engage beyond the superficial narratives of 20th century textbooks. As part of the inviting, inclusive, inspiring, and impactful frameworks of the Engage 2027 strategic plan at Laurel Ridge, We believe it's vital to provide programming for the community that raises awareness and brings to life inclusive narratives and stories from our community. Over the past few years, we've been enriching our community with diverse stories from our conference last October, 60 Slaves for Sale, Reckoning with Enslavement in the Shenandoah Valley. This past May, we had Andre Ferguson screening of his film 33 Black Frog, and today, Reaching Across the Racial Divide. Recently, in a social problems course that I teach, we examined some of what was happening locally during the period of massive resistance in Virginia. And our students, some familiar with those events and some not so much, learned how stories of the past provide us important understandings that help us grapple with the challenges of today. Some of those students are here today, and we're excited to hear more from Betty, Tim, and Ella, for sure. And lastly, and I'm almost finished, before passing the microphone to Laura Douglas from the United Women in Faith, I believe. Okay. I want to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday and raise awareness and encourage everyone to explore the stories of indigenous communities in the Shenandoah Valley, like those found, if you're not familiar, at Flint Run Archaeological Site, also known as the Thunderbird Site, just south of here in Warren County. Learning the stories of our Native Americans who nurtured these lands for thousands of years before European colonization. With that, Laura, I'd like to introduce Laura Douglas.
I'm Laura Douglas. I'm the Social Action Coordinator for the Shenandoah River District of the United Women in Faith. And it's an international women's organization founded in the Methodist Church in 1869. Although the official name has changed many times over our 156-year history, the vision has always been that love in action can change the world. To that end, United Women in Faith connects and nurtures women through spiritual formation to act boldly for justice and to transform communities. And you can check us out at uwfaith.org. But ironically, the book Cousins was added to the United Women in Faith social justice reading list in 2023. And many local members of UWF did not know this story, and that it occurred from one end of the Shenandoah Valley to the other. As the book and its authors gained recognition on a national scale and beyond, there are many in our area who still do not know the story, which is really a part of all of our stories. So we're here today, in person and virtually, to bring about that awareness. It is an exciting event because it is a collaborative event sponsored by all of these groups and individuals, and many of who have been named, and some of you beyond those named. It has truly been a work in progress. And I also want you just to acknowledge and thank the members of our subcommittee, Marquita Mitchell and Heather Gomez, whose generosity, wisdom, and knowledge have been essential to the process. So, yeah, let's have a hand. Where's Heather? Raise your hand, Heather. There she is. Okay. Last sentence. All of these collaborators highlight the good that can come from private, public, praying people connections, and that we are breaking down barriers in more than one way. We welcome you, and thank you so much. Anybody else get? Oh, come on, Marquita. come on up, or you can stand down there.
I'll wait until you come down, I guess.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That was absolutely Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. It is truly not just an honor, but it is a pleasure to introduce the speakers for Reaching Across the racial divide this afternoon. But before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that one of the authors of Cousins is in the hospital and could not be with us this afternoon. Phoebe Kilby, our Phoebe Kilby. When I spoke with her last evening, she wanted us to know that she is so sorry that she could not be with us today. When I shared with her that someone had told me that one of the things that she enjoyed doing the most about the Kilby presentations was creating and writing the bios and all of the background information that go to these events. So when we talked, we agreed that in her honor, I would present the bios and the background information just as she had written it for herself and her cousin Betty. So I think that I can speak for all of us that we are so grateful for Phoebe's words, her wisdom, and her unwavering dedication to help tell the Kilby story. Her presence with the energy that I've experienced already here today. We miss her presence deeply this afternoon. And during this time, let us join together to love her, to pray for her, and to thank her for all that she has done with not only this community in this part of the valley, but the world and internationally. Phoebe Kilby is a Baltimore native. She has degrees in botany and environmental management from Duke University. She worked most of her life as an urban and environmental planner. She later earned a degree in conflict transformation from Eastern Mennonite University right here in our valley. Very active in the Coming to the Table movement, where she researched her family's connection to slavery, leading to her discovery of Cousin Betty. So Phoebe Kilby and Dr. Betty Kilby Fisher Baldwin wrote their book Cousins in 2021. Did I get that year right? Okay, 2021. Cousins, as Laura already said, is on the International Women in Faith 2023 reading program for social justice. Dr. Betty Kilby Fisher Baldwin indeed integrated Warren County High School in as my grandmother used to say, in 1959. After her father sued the school board under the Brown versus Board of Education, which, as we know, that was 1954. She is the author of Wit, Wills, and Walls, which is the story of Betty Kilby as a plaintiff in seeking an education in Warren County, Virginia. This story is also featured in the documentary called Knocking Down Walls, which was done in 2023 and was created by the Spotswood High School students and the Rockingham County Public Schools staff. She has an MBA and an honorary doctorate from Shenandoah University. She and Phoebe have presented nationwide in universities, many other schools, churches, and many, many conferences. And of course, she is a proud graduate of Lord Fairfax Community College, and now, of course, Laurel Ridge. Let's give her a hand on that. Accompanying Betty today is, and I'm going to say your name, but he does not like to be called Timothy. It's Tim. Tim, also, I'm going to say cousin Tim Kilby. He assisted Phoebe in researching the Kilby genealogy. He himself is an accomplished author. The name of his book is Gordivine, Black and White, Slavery and the Kilby Families of the Virginia Piedmont. This tells the story of 3 generations of African-American children and their relationship with the white Kilbys. Rosalind Ella Honesty is here with us today. She is also another cousin, okay, the Kilby family. She is one of the 2 co-facilitators, along with facilitator Kristen Lays of Belgrove. So she's one of the 2 facilitators of the Northern Shenandoah Valley chapter of Coming to the Table, which serves Warren, Frederick, Page, Clark, and Shenandoah counties. That's a lot of counties to serve. So let's join in welcoming them here. One more thing, though, before we do that. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood." As daughters, Betty Kilby Baldwin and Phoebe Kilby have found a way to live Dr. King's dream. Now let us welcome them here today on this very special occasion. Okay.
I want to thank Marquita for that warm welcome. I want to thank each and every one of our sponsors who came together to make this day possible. And thank everyone for coming. Well, good evening. As you can see, Phoebe is not with me. When I went to Asheville as planned to pick up Phoebe, I was going to pick her up and we were going to drive up together. As I drove to her home, Phoebe was being loaded into the ambulance. I sat in her emergency room, and she kept apologizing for not being able to come today. And I kept telling her we knew that of all the presentations that we've done, one day that this would happen. Well, we didn't want to talk about what we were going to do in the emergency room. So the next day, as I was leaving, I pulled on the side of the road and we talked. As we drove, as I talked about the presentation, we talked about Tim, and Tim was in charge of planning our reunion trip. And so naturally, he had asked, what can I do to help? So then we said, okay, he felt right into being a partner and reaching across the racial divide. Our connection was designed using the 4 steps in connecting from coming to the table. And so who better to introduce the 4-pronged plan than Ella? And I think Phoebe just wanted 2 people to represent her at this table today. So she chose Ella and Tim. So Ella.
Do you mind if I stand?
Okay. Oh, I'm going to use my privilege of being in the highlight of my years. So being 80, I didn't want to stand there at that podium. And when they put the chairs up here, that was just right in line with me, so I was happy about that. So Ella is young. She's the next generation.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me? I'm deeply honored to have been asked to be a part of this powerful and inspiring storytelling event by Betty today. And I understand it was Phoebe's also idea. I'm even more deeply honored to hold space for Phoebe. And I'm a crybaby, so when the spirit moves, it just comes right out in tears, and then I get over it. So, back to Betty asking me. As we are Kilby connected cousins, Betty's great-grandfather James and my great-great-grandmother Sarah were siblings. Coming to the Table is a national organization that spans across 19 states with 49 chapters. Our local chapter is called the Northern Shenandoah Valley Chapter, which encompasses Warren, Page, Frederick, Shenandoah, and Clark counties. Our mission focuses on racial reconciliation using 4 pillars: uncovering history with honest truth-telling, making connections by having the courage to sincerely cross racial lines through conversations, working toward healing by offering and accepting genuine forgiveness, and taking action with a sincere heart to make amends for the harms of slavery and its legacies, both institutional and systemic. Our name honors a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. If our whole country could just understand this, we would just be so much further ahead, right? Our movement, fueled by successful black and white family reunions of the Thomas Jeffersons and Will Hairston former enslaver families, was launched with invaluable assistance from the Peace Building Institute at Eastern Mennonite University in January of 2006. We would love for each of you to consider joining us at the table as we celebrate our 20th anniversary, intentionally called the Year of Liberation. And thank you for coming.
In 2002, I wrote and published my historical autobiography, Wit, Will, and Walls. In 2007, Phoebe found the book, and she read it. When she read it, she suspected there was a connection between her family and my family. My father grew up on the Finks farm less than a mile down the road from where her father lived. She came to work in the Shenandoah Valley. She left Baltimore, and she was working at EMU, where she became involved in the Coming to the Table movement. Phoebe began researching her ancestors. She wanted to answer the question, did her family own slaves? Who were they? And was this little girl on the front of Wit, Will, and Walls descended from slaves her family owned? She talked to Will Hairston, who was the founder of Coming to the Table. With all the information she collected from her research over the Christmas holidays, she was sure that we were connected through slavery. Will suggested that the following week was Martin Luther King holiday, and he asked, what better time for her to contact me and to use email so that if there were vile words, she would not have to tolerate them. Well, sent an email, and when she sent the email, I was having computer problems. Even today, I'm not real computer literate. Well, I'm going to read the first email that she sent to me. And after she sent the first email, she didn't get an answer. She said the first day passed, a week, 2 weeks. So she went back to Will, and Will told her, well, maybe you didn't tell her enough for her to grasp who you were and to want to answer you. So then she sent a long email telling me everything. And you know what? This email serves as a way of telling part of the story and giving you background because these are Phoebe's words. But I like the first email better, so I'm going to read that first. She sent that email on January the 15th, 2007 at 9:46 a.m. Don't you just love electronics that can document all of this? The title of the email is An Invitation to Conversation. And it reads, Dear Betty Kilby Fisher, my name is Phoebe Kilby, and I am white. My father grew up in Rappahannock County, near where your father grew up. I have been doing some research on my family, and I've read your book. Having no definitive answers, I suspect that our families had some kind of relationship in the past. I admire very much your courage and the courage of your father and family during the civil rights era and since. It would be an honor to talk to you and meet you someday. I live about 25 miles from Front Royal. Through conversation, we both might find a little bit more about our family's past. Martin Luther King had a dream that the sons of former slaves and former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. Perhaps we as daughters can contribute to fulfilling that dream. Whether she knew it or not, right there she had me. She went on to write, I hope to hear from you and hear that you're interested in conversing with me. That was a pretty powerful email that she sent. And yeah, she had me write it after Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. But as God would have it, I was not supposed to receive that email then. So then the next email that she sent, this is very lengthy, but I want you to hear Phoebe's voice since she's not here today. This was sent on January the 29th, 2007 at 9:48 a.m. So that tells you about that 9:30 hour. This is what she was doing. And this one was titled Contact with Another Kilby. Dear Betty Kilby Fisher, about 2 weeks ago, I sent an email below, hoping that you would respond and that I could correspond with you. Thinking about it, I see that you might be reluctant to contact this stranger from out of the blue. So I thought I would tell you more about myself and my motivations for contacting you. I am Phoebe Kilby, the daughter of Walter and Janet Kilby. I am 54 years old and grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Now I live in the Shenandoah County between Strasburg and Woodstock. I already knew that. So I am not very far from Front Royal, where I know you grew up. As I mentioned in my first email, I have read your book. Just call me Grace.
Under pressure, yes, she is.
Okay. When I was young, we used to visit my grandmother and my father's family in Rappahannock County on a farm called Belmead. I have only vague memories of these visits since they stopped after my grandmother died when I was a teenager. The only visit for the day, and so I never spent much time in Rappahannock County. I was much closer to my mother's family, who lived in Woodstock. I went to college in North Carolina and then lived in the Washington, D.C. area for about 16 years. My husband and I moved to Shenandoah County in 1994. We started to read the Northern Virginia Daily. That's when I became aware that there were black Kilbys. I wondered whether we were somehow related. My father died in 1986, so I could not ask him. My mother said that when she married my father, he told her that his family was not related to the Kilbys in Front Royal. I have long had the feeling that my father had not been truthful, or perhaps his parents had told him that they had no relation to the black Kilbys because they wanted to hide it. But I did nothing to try to find out more about our families until recently. What prompted me to do so is related to my taking a job in Eastern Mennonite University. I do fundraising for the University Center for Justice and Peace Building. This center has a program called Come Into the Table, which promotes dialogue between persons whose ancestors were slaveholders and persons whose ancestors were enslaved. And then she gives me the email or the website where I can look up Coming to the Table. After talking to participants in Coming to the Table, I decided to go to Rappahannock County to see if I could find out whether my ancestors had owned slaves. I already had found my family genealogy. Tim was already at work. By tracing from my father back, I was able to determine that my great-grandfather, Leroy Kilby, lived during the early 1800s. I checked his will in 1859, and there was no mention of slaves. I also checked census data. While the 1840 census did show that Leroy Kilby owned 2 slaves, a male between the age of 10 and 24, that's quite a span, and a female between the age of 36 and 55. Could your family be descendants of these slaves? I'm not sure. Leroy Kilby had a brother, Thomas, who also had slaves, a woman, Juliet, and her 4 children, Simon, John, James, and Sarah. Leroy and Thomas's grandfather, John Kilby, had 1 slave at his death, as noted in his will. So the white Kilbys were slaveholders. Perhaps the most telling information I collected was at the Rappahannock County Historical Society, was a map prepared in 1999 showing names of historic family homes in Rappahannock County. Right next to my father's family farm in Belmead was Dick Fink's Hill. Leroy Kilby farm was a mile or 2 to the south. The fact that your father grew up on the farm next door to my father's family seems very significant to me. Perhaps if we dig deeper, we could find more about our family's connections. I read your father's book and noted in it what appeared to me is his longing for information about his roots. Perhaps you and your brothers and sisters have the same longing. I would like to share my research with you, and perhaps we can piece it together. Phoebe and I would go do presentations. We would stay in the same room, and she would present this information to me, and I would start crying And she was confused. She wanted to know whether I knew it or not. But why was I crying? It was like I had my own views of what had happened, and it was hurtful. Well, anyway, getting back to her email. This is a long email. As I said in the following email, I admire very much the courage of your family during civil rights era. At the same time, I feel shame that my family once owned slaves, and obviously by that very fact, traumatized and mistreated them. Someone in the Kilby family needs to apologize for this injustice, and perhaps that person should be me. I have provided my email address, phone number in the following email. I hope you will contact me. Well, I didn't read this one. I read the first one, and I contacted her from the first one, but she was on the phone and she didn't answer me. So then, when I couldn't catch her by phone, I sent her the following email. Now, January the 29th, 2007, at 12:26. This is like a couple of hours after she contacted me. Well, I sent back and I said, "Hello, cousin." And she thought that was endearing, but that was my way of saying, yes, I know that we are related. But anyway, I wrote, if you're asking yourself why I am so emotional, the Cultural Innovations email address gets full of spam mail and is often down. I went to that site this morning and emails began to download. It could only have been God. We are the key to healing. Meeting you today is so awesome. People will find it hard to believe. I can't believe it. I've always known that we were descendants of slaves, but I couldn't open that door. And then I invited her to the documentary, and I said, we can not only contribute to Dr. King's dream, we can bring about racial reconciliation and healing to a nation of hurting people. I thank God for bringing you into my life. Signed, Betty Kilby Fisher. Well, it's like she was telling me stuff that I'd already known. I had written my book. I was so over being a part of slavery. I had gotten my education, and I was going around the world selling my book and talking about love and forgiveness. The last thing I expected was a white woman challenging me to live Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. But here she was. The documentary based on my book, Wit, Will, and Walls, was about to premiere. And without thinking, I accepted her challenge and invited her to our family dinner. Well, I forgot to tell my family that the descendants, of the family that once owned our family was coming to dinner. Well, our family was gracious, but there were a few mutterings, like, what are you looking for? How long are you going to hang around? And where's my 40 acres and a mule? Well, that didn't bother either one of us. We just let it slide. At the premiere, I introduced Phoebe and her sister as my cousins. I told the audience, tonight we are living Dr. King's dream of sons and daughters of former slaves and former slave owners coming to the table of brotherhood. It was truly a night to remember. This was not our last act together. We went on to make hundreds of presentations. We took the coming to the table training that Ella just told you about. Then I walked the breaking the cycles of violence and building resistance that is featured on page 158 of our book Cousins. And if you get a chance, walk that cycle and review your life. But I'm going to tell you what my reaction to that was. I was a pro at burying my feelings that didn't fit into the picture I had made of myself. I never learned to deal with the trauma of desegregating the high school or dealing with any negative or harmful, hurtful things that came before me and after me. It was easier for me to bury my feelings and keep moving forward to achieve the goals that I had established for myself. No one knew how I felt inside or what it took for me to walk so tall with my head in the air and looking like I had all the confidence in the world. I would stand in front of the mirror and confess, I am a child of God, full of grace and beauty, and if God be for me, then who should be against me? But that only lasted for a little while. I could tell myself I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and that I was empowered by God's incredible power for the situation I knew, for the situation that I had to go through at the time. I could pray myself into a place of confidence and power and control the situation. As I walked the circle in the class, I was reading the words but I knew in my heart when describing, these words were describing me throughout my life. I apologize for being so not organized. I had come to a good place, and I didn't want to remember the bad times. But with each step, my covering was falling off. I was being exposed. I was being forced to look at myself in the mirror in a different light. I didn't want to be that messed up human being that I was for a long time. The one that was injured, lost, one that felt panic, rage, guilt, shame, humiliation. All these things were jumping out at me, describing me. I kept trying to get outside of the circle. I kept trying to say to myself, stay in control, stay in control. But the more I told myself to stay in control, the weaker I became. Then I was crying fearfully, and I was forced back in the world of turmoil, fear, and shame. I was trapped, and I couldn't find my way out. I became overwhelmed with emotion. Shay, an African-American participant, she asked all the white people to leave the room. All African-American participants gathered around me, and they began to pray, one after another, until I gained my self-control. I knew I was going through this brief moment of insanity. It was hard, and it still is, to put into words what happened at that moment when I lost control. When we later joined the group, we all observed a minute of silence. And that's how we go through telling our story one to another with people who love you and people who understand you. Phoebe, after that day, she wasn't satisfied with what we were doing about change. When she asked me what she could do to make amends, I told her, you didn't enslave anybody. You didn't enslave our ancestors. And I had no further expectations of her beyond the work that we were doing in telling our story. Then she came up with the idea of a scholarship for the descendants of Juliet,
and Juliet's children, Simon, James, John, and Sarah. Tim is going to tell you about the scholarship. Tim is also featured in our book Cousins in chapter 9. So Tim, you're on.
Thank you so much, Betty. When I grew up in Rappahannock County, where, our ancestors, our white ancestors, had lived for many, many generations. And when I was young, one of the things that I did as a very curious young person was just searching through, any family records that I could find, and got real interested in the family history. Well, one day I opened up the phone book and wanted to see all the names that might be familiar, Kilby names. And there were a lot of Kilby names in there that I didn't recognize. Many of you probably remember the old phone books. They were real small, and so you would frequently go through and look at people that you may recognize. But anyway, there were a lot of Kilbys, and so I think when my father got home, I went to him and I said, who are all these other Kilbys that are in the phone book? Are these our family, and are we related to them? And do you know who they are? And the answer came back, they're not related to us. And there was real silence there. And so the message that came to me was, you don't ask that question here in our family. So this was not unlike what Phoebe had gone through as a young person. So in, let's see, I think it was about 2010 when I was doing some more family research, I came across an internet article online that mentioned Phoebe and Betty getting together and talking about their experience of making that connection. This was the first instance that I had known about Betty and her family. It really, really took me back, and I wanted to know a lot more and about their experience of meeting together and about this family that I had known nothing about. I was a very young man, a teenager growing up in Rappahannock County and going to Rappahannock High School, just 2 years later than Betty was, and I did not know anything about what was happening over in Warren County. So this was a revelation to me as about what her family was going through, and I wanted to know more, just like Phoebe did, about how our families were related to each other. So I got in touch with Phoebe. I had not even met her or talked to her for like 30 years since we were teenagers, but we were able to meet, and she was able to tell me about her experience at meeting Betty and Betty's family. And I asked, I said, would it be possible for me to meet some of their family as well? And she was saying, well, yeah, understand, what the circumstances are, and yes, you can do that. So I went forward with it, met Betty, met her brother James and some other family members, and talked to Phoebe about, what we saw as our responsibility in making what Phoebe calls making amends to the family, making amends for the wrongs that our white ancestors had done to their ancestors. And Phoebe had said, what she wanted to do and what Betty had and her family had wanted to do was to do something in the field of education. And by reading Betty's book and knowing how important it was to her father that their children, Betty's siblings, got a good education, it was really natural to want to do something in the field of education and to make amends in that area. So Phoebe had done this a long time before I had jumped into this, but Phoebe had decided, let's set up a scholarship fund. And so she had done a lot of research into how to go about doing that, who manages the money, that kind of thing, how would you dispense that? And so she had contacted this organization that also handled scholarship funds for the NAACP and other organizations that was actually located out of Pittsburgh. And so that organization is called Poise Foundation. We're fortunate to have two representatives here, including the president and COO of that organization with us today. And so we were able to set up this scholarship fund. And that fund has provided scholarships for about 50 different scholarships over the last 8 or 9 years, I guess it is. Many students have benefited from it. Many of the students have had multiple awards of up to $5,000 a year. And so we're so honored to be able to fund this scholarship fund and to provide funds for that are in the spirit of James Wilson Kilby, Betty's father.
Okay. Again, we want to thank you for coming. This concludes our presentation, and now we'd like to hear from you. So we are ready to ask the questions. We just want to give you just enough of our story for you to, whatever thoughts that come through your mind, that you ask the questions.
What would you like to see from this group? What would you like to see from this group to do something for the situation we're dealing with today?
Well,
Besides buying books.
no, what you're doing is we have the NAACP. You guys all help to sponsor this program. And so I want you to keep doing what you're doing, because out of all these voices that is in the room today, keep talking to one another, because the way Phoebe and I started off, we just started talking. And as you talk, as you bring your voice and your ideas, it'll be you guys that will help to heal our nation.
Thank you so much for your presentation. So my question to you would be, what would you say to somebody sitting on an email like the one that you got before they push send today?
I would say go ahead and push that button and send that email, because you never know what is on the other side, who will answer. And Phoebe was always afraid that I would answer in a negative tone, because she had read Whitwell and Walls. She knew all that I had gone through. My life was no crystal stairway. And so there was that fear, but she pushed it anyway. And that's why I love my sister so, because I always say that we are Kilbys in black and white, because we had that same gusto for civil rights and that same fight for what was right. I knew how I got mine. I got mine from James Wilson Kilby. And there's James Wilson Kilby reincarnated, sitting right over here on the front row. But I didn't know where she got hers from. But we must surely be kin.
We have another question.
As a super big reader of fiction revolving around Black history, what other books, other than your two books and any other books published by the Kilby family, would you recommend for people who want to learn more but want to see it through a lens like The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd, or any other books like that?
Phoebe was the great reader, and she has a list of books to read in the back section of this book. So this book will give you that information. Buy the book, it gets you a whole lot of stuff. And Tim has a book that gives you a lot of background into our family. You want to talk about your book? But it gives the background of the history, and he has gone back how many generations?
8 generations, I think it is.
8 generations. Tim is shy, and so only because Phoebe couldn't be here can I get him to get up and talk. And he's won awards, and he's still been shy, so I guess I'll have to talk enough for both of us, for both sides of the family.
I just want to thank you all very much for your presentation. And I would just like to say to the audience in large, when you hear things being said that you know are wrong and against race and against others, don't let it go by. Stand up.
Dr. Betty, I represent churches all around this Commonwealth who are finding themselves in the reality of history on both sides of similar stories to yours and Phoebe's. Some who are the fruit of freed slaves, and the others who are unearthing things like shackles and Confederate money in their own buildings and things. And so what advice do you offer to help shepherd them towards processes of reconciliation when they're not ready to come to the table?
You know, it's like I wasn't ready to come to the table, but I came to the table, and we have to put down all of the past and move forward. We can't stand still. So I tell them, don't stand still. Keep moving forward. And if you want to see change, and you know, we can't change the past, but we surely can change the future for those youngsters back there.
So I would like to say that I wanted to know. And so when I got the email from cousin Tim, after inquiring through Cartwright Funeral Home if he knew of an Ella Honesty at Oric Cemetery, Bruce's response was, I know an Ella Honesty, but she's not dead. So numbers were exchanged, and we met, and it was the gift of wanting to know for 58 years who were the people that hung on my grandparents' walls that to me as a child looked white. And my grandfather said, well, that's me when I was a baby, and that's my mother, Ella, that you're named after. So Tim's email was to say, I have some information, and I don't want to push it on you, but if you want to know. And I was like, yes, thank you, Jesus. So he sent me a dossier, and I'm looking through it, and in awe, I come to a page that in black and white has a tombstone with my name on it. And I never knew. Oric Cemetery being where a lot of other members of my family was buried, I never knew about the old side. And so it's important to know that there are different avenues for people to understand a truth that they're ready or not ready, but want to know. So don't let that be a deterrent, because I would not have found what I had been looking for had I not responded. I called him first and then responded. And at the same time, it came around the time that my mother had passed away, and I was feeling orphaned and petitioned the Lord about what is my purpose, what am I here for, back in Winchester after being gone for 36 years. And I heard in my audible heart's ear, the Holy Spirit said, tell them who they are. And then he sends Tim into my life, and I'm like, whoa, this is like big. What are you talking about? You pointing to your word, how I live my life. And so it was my family that led me to the table. And the night that we were going to meet, he said, I'm going to call before that night. He says, I'm going to call up James. And I said, James? And he says, yeah, James is your cousin. You have Black Kilby cousins. And I never knew that they were born and raised in the very town, Front Royal, that my mother's parents were raised in, that my mother's family. So my quest of finding honesty, literally and figuratively, was answered through the courage of Tim Kilby. And our story, if you will, in the continuum, is in gourd vine, black and white. So don't be afraid. We need to know what you have the keys to unlock that history isn't telling us, because it only goes so far.
I would like to thank Miss Betty for taking the courage to speak out, because when I first met Miss Betty, I didn't know the story. And it was probably about 10 years later when I saw her, because I was growed up around her kids, hanging out. 10 years later, we're on Shenandoah campus, as after she's written Wit Walls, and that book that I hear the story, and we start talking then. So often in people of color, we were told they don't talk about it. We don't talk about what happened. I remember asking my grandmother, and she's like, that's in the past. You're going to do better, and you're going to move forward. So I thank you for having the courage, and the more we all learn and speak out to do that, of how far and where we've come from, will unite us all. And there are going to be moments of those tears, there's crying, that pain, but just understand it's grief cycle. So I thank you for finding the courage to give others the courage to move forward with this. So thank you so much.
I'd like just to add that the work that we're doing doesn't stop with Betty and her family. Through the research, I wanted to know more about not only her second great-grandfather, but his siblings. Her great-grandfather was Simon Kilby, and he had two brothers, John and James, and a sister, Sarah, and we think another sister named Elizabeth or Betty. And I wanted to find out if it was possible to trace descendants of those other family members, those other children of Sarah and the white Kilby that fathered her children. I wanted to find those descendants, and so that research led me to discover cousins, living cousins all across the nation. And so we have other cousins that know a lot of the history that they never knew before, and have made connections to each other. So this work, we hope, is spreading far, and some of them, the younger generations, can benefit from the scholarship fund, and this work that we're doing to make connections and to try to heal the wounds that were caused by the white Kilby ancestors that I have. That we are in fact coming to the table together in love and brotherhood, and trying to make a change in this world.
First, I want to answer Thea's comment. What gave me the courage to write this book? We were never told not to talk about the story, but we were told not to tell certain things. And when I sit down to write this book, to leave out any piece of information or the piece of information that we weren't supposed to talk about, the book didn't make sense. So I had to tell the whole truth of the story, and some ugly and some very harsh. This book started out of a Virginia history class that I took at Shenandoah University. I saved the Virginia history for my very senior year because I felt as though all they were going to talk about was slavery. And I knew that we descended from slavery, and that brought no particular honor to me. The only thing that it did was motivated me to dispel that African Americans couldn't learn and that we were dumb, because for a long time I was traumatized and I could not learn, but I was not dumb, but I had pinned dumb on me. So I was sitting in that class, and Dr. Hofstra said, well, the first thing that we're going to talk about in this, we're going to talk about the antebellum period. And he told us what we were going to do during that first half of the class. And the next half of that class, we are going to talk about that little girl in Front Royal who sued the school board to gain entrance into high school. And I thought, well, he's talking about me. And I sit forward and I kick the chair in front of me because I was laying back all slumped over. So after the class, and we were getting to the period where we were going to write about this little girl in Front Royal, I went to him and I told him, I'm that little girl. Are you talking about Betty Ann Kilby versus the Warren County School Board? He said, yeah. I said, that's me. That's when he kicked over the trash can. But that's what gave me the courage, because he said, oh, you must. You're a primary source. I didn't even know what a primary source was at that point in time. But it's the encouragement of others that causes us to begin the conversation, the difficult conversation. And the one thing that I learned through coming to the table was that we had to start with that difficult conversation. And that's what all of us in this room, and I see a lot of snow on the roof. And so before we leave this earth, we need to start the conversations. Yes, sir.
How do you deal with the 250, the celebration of the American Revolution coming up next year? How do you process that? Because your people face 90 more years of slavery when the white people are celebrating the revolution.
Sometimes I simply say that don't pertain to me. That is not a celebration that I want to partake of, and I don't. So I pick and choose my battles, and that's the way we all have to do. I took a class, and it said that if you ignored a negative, sometimes it goes away because you don't acknowledge it, you know. And there are some holidays that I don't acknowledge because it did not benefit my people. It tend to hold me back and my people back. So the negative, sometimes the best way to deal with it is to just let it slide. And let other people, I'm not trying to take anything from anybody who chooses to celebrate a holiday, as long as it doesn't come in and conflict with me personally.
Thank you. This is really an inspiration for me. Ella knows me and kind of knows my story. I'm going to use this opportunity for a shameless and selfless ask. My name is Vicki Quarles. And I've only been in Virginia for about a year and a half. I got here and people said, Quarles, are you related to? No, I don't know anything about that. I'm from the Midwest, and I'm learning a whole lot about this name here in Virginia and my ancestors' relationship to that name. I didn't even know about my white privilege till just a few years ago, and boy, was that eye-opening. I've been reading a ton of books and learning and growing, and Ella is a big part of helping me do that. So my ask is, if anyone knows any Quarleses, black or white, to please let me know. I've just started my genealogy journey. It's a lot. I have documents, handwritten documents with slave names, people who were enslaved by my ancestors, and land grants and deeds and the whole thing. So yes, please let me know if you know any Quarleses.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to give a shameless plug, no, for coming to the table, because I met Vicki here at 66 Slaves for Sale. And there was something about her, and we talked for a minute, and I invited her to come to the table, that we could help her find the information that she wanted to know, and take her time with it, and find a safe harbor. And that's one of the things that we can do, and you can do it through coming to the table, because these hard conversations that are dealing with racism and no, you weren't part of that, but if you're condoning institutional and systemic racism now, you are a part of it, and you cannot change what's happened in the past, but you can champion things that you know that can help to change that. And so it's important to know that you have a place with coming to the table that isn't political, it's not religious, but I will say to you that it is spiritual. And we're all spiritual beings, and that really is what connects us first and makes us all cousins. And the second thing I want to say is, when it comes to courage and confidence, I don't believe that there's anything more courage building and confidence building than African American children knowing who their grandparents and great-grandparents were. And so to tell the story, even to start to pay attention to when you have a funeral, there's usually a pamphlet that goes with it, and it tells some family history. That's kind of like how I got started. But it's important to know that, yes, there are the Martin Luther Kings and the civil rights icons, but there are also strong shoulders in your own family that you can stand on, and to know that they, like with Juliet Ann from Sarah, and I mean, this man took me 6 generations up to show me my ancestry through my paternal grandfather's mother's side of the family. And what happens with that is, when you realize that they stood long enough for you to get here, when a person comes to you, a child, and wants to call you the N-word or any other kind of word, and you know that God makes no mistakes, and you know how strong you are, it makes it so much easier to say teach your children, to say to the person, well, honey, that's not my name. Are you having a bad day? Do you need a hug? And it's really important. That part of history is really, it starts right in the home. And I really, really believe that we must do it, because I have seen parents rubbing the backs of their children to console them, so to speak, while they're telling me about it, saying it's going to be okay. Well, no, we need to teach them coping skills. And the truth is the coping skill. And nigga is not my name. It's not my name. What's your name? Do you know your names? I just wanted to say that.
All right.
I'm just marinating in that a little bit before I ask my question. Thank you, Ella. It's a privilege to be here, and thank you for having this event. I would like to be presumptuous to recommend a couple books. There was a question earlier, not to crosswise with the bibliography or recommendations that is in the Cousins, but I've been particularly impressed by these books, and it may be helpful. And I understand Phoebe's not able to even watch this video, so wish you rapid healing, Phoebe. Black AF history. And if you don't know what AF is, in polite company, I'll just say it's as, then it rhymes with luck. Black AF History by Michael Harriot, Harriott. And it's excellent as an audiobook, recently written. And then to be kept perhaps at your desktop, physical desktop reference, 400 Souls, a community history of African America, 1619 to 2019. It's co-edited by Abraham Kendi and Keisha Blaine. Thank you. I don't have any other authority other than to say I've read them both and keep them handy. I have a question, please, kind of on the lighter side for Betty. When Phoebe came to that first dinner, do you remember what was the menu?
It was at a restaurant, and that was safer than having it at somebody's house. My two daughters were there, and they ran interception. If somebody decides that they were going to get controversial or not be polite. Yeah, we kept it at a restaurant so that you're going to control yourself in public, and you're not going to cause a scene. But things went well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be in the front row next.
Okay. Thank you so much for telling your story, because I think that is what is important, that we hear the stories. I taught in Warren County schools for 8 years. I never heard the story until, I guess, when about the time the documentary was being made.
Right.
And I thought, why did I teach in Warren County schools and never hear that story? There's something wrong there. I remember during the pandemic, hearing about Tulsa, what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I never knew that story. I felt cheated. I felt very cheated that I didn't know those stories. So someone said about what can we do? I belong to a book club. Everyone, when my name's drawn, I get to choose a book. Guess which book I'm going to choose the next time?
When my children, my two older children, they're now in late 50s, early 60s, when they were in high school, I hadn't told them my story either. And they were studying in high school, and the teacher told my daughter, my oldest daughter, go home and ask your mama. And so she came home and she asked me. And so that was my opportunity to tell my children the story of desegregating the high school. What I didn't want to do is, I didn't want to teach them to react to my story negatively, because I always believe in, if you tell somebody, you're going to have to tell them the truth. So to avoid telling them at all, I didn't have to acquaint them with the hard facts of life. But they understood how to use that information. And one of the things that my father would not allow us to do is he did not allow us to hate. He would not teach hate, no matter what he went through. So yeah, I'm not surprised. And when we did the documentary in 2006, 2007 timeframe, we were allowed to film that documentary inside the high school. But the Pope decided to feature me in one of his stories on Stories of a Generation. And when they wouldn't allow the Pope, the people for the Stories of Generation to do any kind of filming in the school. And that was just in 2020, 21, 22 time frame. So we go through cycles of telling the story, not telling the story. But now there's a nice historical marker at the foot of Warren County High School.
I had heard earlier, yeah.
That's up to you guys, huh?
Earlier you were talking about how it was hidden in the family and people didn't talk about it. And that's how so many generations had passed and nobody knew the interrelationships that were going on, the connections. Now that we're going forward, and you alluded to saying we need to go forward, and being out here today doing what you're doing is moving forward.
Yes.
And how has your family been able to integrate? How has your family, do they intermarry? Do we have different nationalities all blending together the way the American society has been moving for? And, you know, because I know I've got 12 different nationalities in my family, and we've blended very well, and we have strength, and our family is stronger as a unit than it's ever been. I'm wondering if your family's had the same experience.
Well, the first thing, you look back in the back, there's my granddaughter, and those other 3 children are my great-grandchildren. So you just take one look at them and you will understand that we love each other. What the bond that holds us is love of family. There's my brother Gene sitting there. Well, I know he's here with the NAACP, but he's out here supporting his sister. My brother Tim, we needed somebody to take Phoebe's place today. Here's Tim. Tim's first question was, what can I do to help? And Tim, I can tell you, Tim don't like sitting up here in front of people and talking. He wrote his book, and he'd rather not sell his book to get out there. And that's a great tribute to the family for him being up here today. That's love. Right, Tim? That's love.
Hi, my name's Valerie Hayes, and I know a bunch of people here, and a bunch of people know me. I'm an Episcopal priest, and I had been the rector of Calvary Episcopal Church for 6.5 years, and have lived in Warren County for 7. The question about what we can do, I know there's many communities, members of communities of faith here, and I'm gonna especially say to the white folks, in your church community, and if this is important to you, you go to your pastor and say, I want our church to begin having this conversation. Because I can tell you, it's powerful when members, you all, I'm Episcopalian, so we say the first ministers of the church are all baptized persons, not the ordained persons. And our baptismal covenant includes seeking and serving Christ in all persons and loving your neighbor as yourself, and striving for justice and peace, and upholding the dignity of every human being. But if you go, whatever your tradition is, to your pastor and say, I am interested in doing this, it's really powerful. Because when pastors are trying to initiate that, and there's resistance to it, it is the topic in a community of faith that can create fractures. It's a highly, highly emotional topic, especially in this part of Virginia. Well, in Virginia, I've lived all over. I've never lived in a place quite like Front Royal in Warren County. I lived in Norfolk, Virginia, and I never knew about massive resistance in Front Royal. And when I took the call to my church, it was not part of the history of our church. And our church at the time offered Sunday school classrooms to white students. The other piece is for clergy person, most denominations, a clergy person's salary comes from those who give. And if clergy people are trying to stand up for justice in a way that is being, Ellie, that clergy are being called to stand up for justice in our time and have been. But there can be incredible resistance to it. Some denominations have protections for clergy, but other denominations, if a board of deacons in a church says we're not going to renew your contract, you're done. So support your pastors. Bring this to them. Do your reading. I was with some white folks, and we were talking about, she had questions, but it's our responsibility to teach ourselves. Ella is gracious, and Tim, they spoke to a group of students this summer from Virginia and from Liverpool, UK, but as white people, we're responsible to learn, not to have other people explain it to us. It's not Ella's job to explain her pain to us. So I'm a huge advocate for racial justice. The Episcopal churches, our dioceses, but even so, it is such hard work when, and y'all are the exception, when white people, it's just too hard for them, it's really hard to move. And I know so many clergy who will say, white clergy say, my people aren't ready to talk about this. And my Black Episcopalian friends is like, it's been 450 years. How much more time do you need? Right. So, and to say we're not ready to talk about it is like, okay, that's the voice of their white privilege, that they can deny that they need to deal with this. And like you said, systemic patterns of disparity are rampant in our country. And so, okay, no, your ancestors didn't, but we live, just look at what's happening. And so anyway, I'll stop now. I get on my soapbox. But I would encourage you to join coming to the table, to join your whatever county, to join your NAACP, to find out where there are disparities in your community, whether it's kids in school who need laptops or find where there are disparities in your community that are based on a racial or ethnic divide, and then get a group of like-minded people and start just say, we want to fix this or do something about this. And you have one person, and then you have two people, and then you have 5 people, and then you keep going. You keep going. Support your clergy.
And that's the easy way to start it. And it's up to everyone that's in this audience to do what my sister has said to her suggestion.
Hello, I'm Ginger Newton. I actually teach in Warren County. I'm a longtime resident of Warren County. And so I started teaching about 7 years ago, but I taught 5th grade, 4th grade. Now I'm a gifted and talented teacher. When I started 4th grade, they told me I was going to teach Virginia Studies, and I was kind of not big on it because I grew up in Warren County, and we mainly, like, historically just talked about maybe 3 main black people, and it was like Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman. It was like a little paragraph in the history books. So I wasn't really big on that. But my first year going through the book, I was like, okay, we're talking about mass resistance. We do talk about other things. And that wasn't something that I knew about growing up because it wasn't taught to us. Then, like, after I kind of went, like, I'm a person that goes down rabbit holes. So after I started learning about massive resistance, I think there was like either like a it could have been the Warren County interview that you did. And Lillian Sloan is one of my cousins, and she was part of the massive resistance. So I learned there was like 20 people, but there was like maybe 3 or 4 people that was related to me. And so after I learned that, the second year, my 3rd year, I started bringing up the Warren County newspaper about massive resistance and explaining to students that it also happened in our county, because it's hard to understand, like, oh, we're talking about Barbara Johnson, and this happened, you know, in another town that we don't know, like, well, we're not familiar with. So for them to find out that it also happened in Warren County, it was more touching, more relatable and understanding. For them. And then, so now me teaching gifted and talented, I have more room for creativity. So last year was my first year teaching that. And so in February, I started talking about local black people who have made a difference in our community. And so I talk about James Kilby because, again, it's something that kids don't usually get to hear about. So even though it's like a smaller population, I go to 3 different elementary schools. So I do bring up about him. My sister, Latasha Thompson, she also was one of the first black women that was part of our town council. So the kids are always like, Miss Newton, you're so famous. I'm like, not really, but okay. Because I also, during Veterans Day, we go through a lot of people that, you know, was in my family, so they're like, Miss Newton, you're just famous. I'm like, not really, but it's just an honor to me to be able to be here. I didn't know about your book until last year. I was on an interview committee, and there's a teacher over at Warren County Middle School. Her name is Haley Groves, and she's a history teacher, so she really goes down more rabbit holes than I do. And so we were talking, and she was just like, loves researching local history. So she said, Ginger, you've got to read Betty Kilby's book, you know, Wills and Walls. And so I was like, oh my God. And I'm not a huge reader, you know, this sounds odd to be a teacher and not be a huge reader, but when you're in school all the time, you're like, shh. But I went down the rabbit hole, and I read your book, and it was a ball of emotions, but it was an amazing book, and I was glad that she recommended that to me. And after that, I recommended it to everybody. I'm like, you gotta read this book. You gotta read this book. It's so good. But again, it's just an honor, and I appreciate it. One other thing, like, it's kind of funny. When I was in 12th grade, I don't really remember the assignment, but I kind of did my own thing. And so in Warren County, like, it's predominantly white, I grew up in the 90s, so there was maybe like I was like one of two kids in my English class, and that was black. And I remember our teacher was like, this is whatever the assignment was, we were doing a research project. And because I had one teacher in 7th grade who didn't just read out of the book. He, like during Black History Month, he would close the book and say, we're reading these slave diaries. I was like, oh. So he kind of encouraged me to start researching myself. So I ended up researching about the Black Panther Party. And at first I was like, oh my God, this, we've heard so many negative things, but when I actually did the research, I was like, if I research this and it's negative, there's no way I'm gonna do this. And I researched and found out it was way different than what we had understood. And so my teacher made me get up and do my presentation in front of everybody. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous because I'm the only Black person in the class. And afterwards, she was like, can I keep your paper? I was like, oh, okay. She's just like, I would like to read this to other people. So I encourage anybody to research. And it can be just anything, just knowing that our history books are not giving us all the details, and there's so much hidden things that we don't know about. And one of the books the gentleman mentioned earlier, Black AF, I just purchased that one too. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Adele Gunn, and I'm very impressed with this wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I am sorry, though, that I cannot read your book because I'm legally blind. And my daughter tried to find it in the Audible, and it's not available. I'm hopeful that there is some possibility that it will become available with for those of us who would love to read it carefully, but don't have the eyesight to do it.
Phoebe and I have sold 25,000 copies of Wit, Will, and Walls. And all I have left are the copies we got from, we got used copies. And so that's all that's left. We have a second edition coming out, and we were excited about possibly having the second edition for here today, but it just didn't work out for us. But one of the things that I have, I had stopped working, and we were doing very few presentations, so we weren't growing the sale of the book. But we just got the rights back to Cousins. We just did our first publication, is the ones that you're buying today is when we no longer have a publisher. We're self-published. And so at one point, it's our desire to at least have a book where you can listen to it of Wit, Will, and Walls. And I wanted to do that myself. They say that if you want a legacy and you want to leave something, put it in a book. So what I did was took out some of the information in the last few chapters and added the our petition that we filed in court on August the 29th. That is now a part of the second edition of Wit, Will, and Walls. And so one day we will, and I'm 80 now, so I got to do it soon. So we will have something that people can listen to.
We have a
Just real quick, there are two great books, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkinson. I think that's her last name. Yes. And also Colson Whitehead's Underground Railroad.
Laura has a question. And in case I forget, when we finish today, remember there's books that for available in the back.
And those are my grandchildren and my granddaughter and my great-grandchildren that are selling the books today.
I was in such a hurry in my opening remarks, and I left out an important piece of information, and that how United Women in Faith came to sponsor this. We had 3 racial justice retreats over the last year or so, and they were held at Front Royal United Methodist Church, and just down the street is that marker at the high school. But we had a panel that we had recruited for just the first retreat, and we ended up, the same panel participated in all 3. And at the end of the retreat, we say, where do we go from here? And by God's grace, here we are today. But I want you to know who was on that panel. Of course, Marquita was there. Miss Lillian Sloan was a part of the retreat. Reverend Costello Forney, and also Felicia Thomas, who are both in Harrisonburg right now. And those women loved us and led us in that journey, and because of the hospitality of Front Royal United Methodist Church. And I am the face of so many United Women in Faith and others. So I wanted to make sure you knew that before you left this place, as we give thanks for those people who are stepping forward and who are a part of the journey. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, then we. Oh. Can I make a comment? Yes.
Betty, I would like to tell you my family's story. Several people said they lived in Front Royal. We moved to Front Royal in August 1959.
Oh, wow, right in the middle.
Yeah, right when Warren County finally integrated. My older brother and my sister attended Warren County High School with you. I was 12, so I was in 7th grade. So in 8th grade, then I attended Warren County High School with you and with other black students that integrated. And it was definitely an interesting experience because we moved from Pennsylvania, and my sisters and my brother were talking the other week because we were talking about the integration of Warren County High School. And I asked them, were there black persons up in Pennsylvania where we lived? And my oldest sister said, I can't remember but one black student in the school up there. And the other thing, when we moved to Front Royal, I thought was so interesting. We went into the 5 and 10, went to the water fountain, and guess what? There were 2 water fountains, white and colored. And I asked my mother, what does colored water look like? So that was so interesting to find out about that and the way Front Royal treated the black people then. Yeah. But I was also lived there long enough. I got married and we moved back to Front Royal, and I was able to vote for the first black mayor of Front Royal in the 1970s. And it was so great to learn that a black male could be elected mayor.
That's right.
After those years.
Yes. Time brings about a change.
Okay, so so we'll I guess we'll thank our guests one last time.
Will you all hang around for a little bit
I
out
want
by
to
the
thank
back?
you for coming. Yes, we'll be around until I think they kick us out at 3, or we'll be around until they kick us out. So thank you for coming.